Good morning, everybody. Hi. Hi from Enders Island. Welcome. Welcome to the May Connections with Seniors. I'm so glad you're here. We're going to start in just a minute. And I'm excited whether you're from Mystic, New London, Niantic, Bristol. My mom should be joining shortly. Where are you, Mom? Actually, my mom's joining today from Westport, Connecticut. She's visiting one of my sisters. We have a really great lineup today. Special guest Barry Salick is back by popular demand. One of my daughters is here with an awesome recipe. Jacinta's here to talk about a wonderful new program at Enders Island. And if this is your first time joining, Enders Island is an 11-acre island off the coast of Mystic. And we are devoted to hope, recovery, and healing. And it is connected by a lovely little single lane causeway. It's starting to look absolutely gorgeous. Although our dahlias aren't in bloom yet, we're welcoming everyone on the island now that social distancing and mask regulations have changed as of May 19th. So please come visit. And again, if you're new to Zoom, you can send me a note in chat, which is the little button down at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and I can try and answer your questions live or when I send the follow-up email. Because just remember that all of the information I'm sharing today and the recipes I'll put in the email that comes out. So I'm going to get started because it's already 10:03. And again, for those of you that are new, this program is really in appreciation. We want to make sure we remind everyone that the Rotary Club of Mystic and the Pfizer Foundation funded this program for us at Enders Island with their generous support. And we really appreciate the Rotary support. It is invaluable. And it really was all about helping folks connect during the pandemic. And we'll talk a little bit about it at the end of the program. Now that it's springtime and almost summer and everyone's out and about, we're probably going to be thinking about a different way to communicate with everyone and not just via Zoom, which is pretty exciting. So I really want to introduce our first guest, who again is back by popular demand. And one of the recurring questions I was getting in the email was, gee, you know what? I am getting a little bit worried about inflation. I do see that house prices, lumber, food prices are going up. You know, could Barry talk a little bit about that? And while they loved Barry's charts, they really just wanted to listen to Barry. So today, Barry's going to give us an update of what he's seeing now. And welcome, Barry, from Janney and Company.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for asking me back. For those that don't know me from the last call, my name is Barry Salick. I'm the first vice president here in Mystic at Janney Montgomery Scott, which is the oldest firm in our world. We've been in business since 1832, and I'm part of a team here where we manage money for individuals, families, small businesses. We're over by Red 36 in the Allen Spool Mill building. We love our location here. So, yeah, you know, I start my day usually going out in the warm weather barefoot to get my newspapers. And yesterday's Wall Street Journal, I'm going to hold it up here. Well, first, nice article about picture of Bill Nicholson, but it's inflation. Signs of inflation threaten investors' portfolios. So it is something that is in the news a lot. And if you, well, I guess we can back up a little bit, and you might say, well, what's going on? And in our last talk, I mentioned, you know, some of the side effects of this very accommodative loose federal policy from the Chairman Powell that started a little over a year ago in response to the recession that was induced by COVID to keep the economy going. And so they made the availability of capital very low. So the overnight lending rate, the target rate for overnight lending, was brought down to zero, and the Fed has been very aggressively buying fixed income to keep interest rates low. So they've been expanding the Federal Reserve's balance sheet by buying in the open market. So what has that done? Well, we talked about that the last time, and I said there would be, our thought for the year ahead was just like when you get your vaccine, there's side effects. You might get a sore arm or chills or cough or whatever, but there's side effects to very accommodating federal policy, monetary policy. And there's a number of them. One is you get a weak dollar. And if you look at the dollar index has gone lower. And that started really before last year. We were heading lower against some of the major world currencies. Is it something you should worry about? Well, if you're going to have a vacation on the west coast of Ireland this summer, the cost of a euro has gone way up. A couple of years ago, euros were around $1.08, $1.09, and now we're in the 120s. So, so weak dollar. One side effect. Another side effect is rising interest rates. So we saw that. The 10-year Treasury back in September was around 0.6, and it got up to about 1.7 6 months later. So rising interest rates, weak dollar. The other thing that happens, another side effect, is a rotation that began in October from growth stocks to value stocks. Value stocks are these sort of like stodgy industrials and, old-fashioned stocks. Here, I'll give you some examples. So money's flowing into value. So let's take a look at a few of them. Apple down about 4%, 4.3% this year. Here's Netflix down 8%. Tesla's down 14%. Amazon is at 0.26. And then, so those are all the high-flying giant growth stocks. What about some of the old industrials or the value stocks? Here's Caterpillar up 30% year to date. FedEx is up 19%. Stanley Works in Britain is up 19% year to date. So what is that telling you? You look at some of the energy stocks, they're up a lot. ExxonMobil up 40% year to date. Airlines up around 20%. So there's been a shift from high-tech growth and chasing after growth to value. So that's one of the effects of the side effects of the loose federal monetary policy, or the accommodative federal monetary policy. The last one is inflation. So this earlier in the year when we talked, one of the predictions was we would see the core inflation rate, which is over 50 years is about 2.6% per year. You would see that cross over 3%, and the Fed would probably take no action, and we would probably see it cross over 4%. So if we look at the 50-year core CPI, that's the core. There's a headline CPI, a core, and there's those are the two major ones. We're now at 4.2. So we still don't think that the Fed is going to do anything. We think that this is transitory, meaning that a lot of it's energy related. If you look at where energy prices were a year ago, because when you're looking at
so Barry, before I forget, did that energy issue have anything to do with the pipeline being held up, so to speak?
Well, yeah, good point. I mean, the inflation rate right now, if you break the CPI down to the components, energy is the biggest component that's gone up a lot. So the energy year over year as a component of the CPI is up 25%. So you have other things up 2%, up 3%, energy up 25%. The pipeline interruption, that would show not in the current numbers, it would show probably in next month's CPI. We would see that factor.
So if we're trying to get a simple thing to follow, watch the CPI if I'm hearing you correctly, and hoping that 4.2 is transitory and then it goes back down in essence. So And is that really an indicator, like a leading indicator of inflation or a following indicator?
Well, the CPI is always backwards looking. So it's
Okay.
looking at year over year. So the April CPI number is comparing April from a year ago to April of 2021. The May will look back on May of last year. So it's always looking back 1 year. It's a rolling number. But if you look at, so then, well, let's talk about the risk to your portfolio. Rising interest rates are a risk to owning fixed income. And the further out on the maturity levels are on your bonds, the more risk there is. So as an example, I'm looking at the 20-year Treasury bond. If you bought it on January 1st and you put $100,000 into a 20-year Treasury, it's worth $89,000 today. So if you bought T-bills, you put $100,000 into T-bills, they're worth $97,000 today. So that gives you an idea of the risk that rising interest rates can have on fixed income or on bonds. So, and if you look at, if you're retired, and this is retirees mostly, there's something called the real yield too. In other words, if you have our target for the 10-year Treasury, which is the benchmark, that's the one everybody uses, our target rate is 2.5%. We don't think it'll get much higher than that over the next year or two.
Okay.
And however, if you're running 3% inflation, that means the real yield on those bonds is a negative 0.5% because you're losing buying power. The bonds are going down in value. So
So that sounds like the biggest risk there is in the bond market, correct?
bond market, rising interest rates. So stocks as an asset class, if we go back to 1973, if we have if you look at rolling 12-year time periods over going back to 1973, stocks have 90% of the time have delivered higher returns, or they delivered positive returns in 90% of those 12-month periods where the CPI was below 3%. So
I
of
see.
course, if the CPI is below 3%, stocks are a good place to be. If the CPI is over 3% and rising, 48% of those time periods, those 12-month rolling time periods, the stock market has returned positive returns in 12-month periods. So so then the question becomes, is inflation going to be heading north over 4%? Then stocks become under risk, under pressure as well. So
does that come back then to the old truism of have a diversity in your portfolio because there are so many levers that could impact one or the other? I mean, if that headline was correct, and when I read the article, I thought, wow, now I know why, so many people are asking this question because, and they're also seeing it in their grocery bill, or if they're buying, lumber, as I understand it, all over the country is at a shortage. Even carpet, because carpet comes from petroleum. I hadn't really thought about that, as well as dry cleaner told me that their costs are going up because they have a lot of petroleum base in it. So I'm wondering if this is like a new, would you imagine, Barry, it's a new level set, like we probably shouldn't expect this to go down. We hope that it stays flat. Is that a fair?
Well, it really comes down to the question of, is it something that's just temporary? If you look at food and you look over the last year, soybeans, I follow commodities, I'm licensed commodities futures person, but soybeans are up 69% over the last 12 months. Wheat is up 49%, I'm sorry, 24%, and sugar is up 49%. So, basic food commodities are up a lot. However, there's been some recent peaks, and so they have started to come back down. Wheat is the big one. So wheat, which was up over 40% year to date since January 1st is now, where is wheat today? Wheat is up 3%. So wheat has given up about 35% of pricing. And same thing with soybeans have come back down, sugar's come back down. I'm looking at it on my screen. Corn has come back down a little bit. So we saw what looks like a peak in food commodity prices about a month ago. And the same thing for lumber. Lumber is LBS, that's the lumber futures.
Okay, so that's good to know.
That's good. Yeah. So going forward, that takes a bit of time. I don't think we're at risk of seeing as you remember, the last time we had food inflation, it seemed like the price of a half gallon of ice cream stayed the same. Well, what happened was the container got smaller. And then, so that's what food companies tend to do. They make containers smaller, keep the pricing the same, and it looks like you don't have inflation where you really do. It's interesting too, because locally we saw, you're seeing, and it's nationwide too, real estate prices are at an all-time high. Gold is at a record level. And, yet when the inflation numbers came out a couple of weeks ago for April, the traditional benchmarks all lost ground. So TIPS, which are Treasury inflation protected securities, they adjust the rate to whatever the CPI is. They lost ground. REITs, real estate investment trusts, lost ground, and commodities lost ground. Those are the big three. So what does that tell you? That tells you that the market doesn't believe that the inflation is in a spiral.
Yeah, that's what we want.
Yeah, so we think it's just temporary. There are some things that would cause inflationary spiral. You can get into the technicals, but if we got steadily higher inflation readings month after month after month, but also followed by, because they measure consumer sentiment, and if you had steadily higher consumer expectations of higher inflation, that contributes towards the spiral. And then also, if you look at yield curves, in other words, so now you start to get an inflation yield curve, you start to get an expectation yield curve. If those steepen, meaning they start to go like this or like that, you get a steepening in those curves, that's something that is not good. But we don't.
Barry, I think if anyone on the call was to want to get a sense of consumer sentiment, do I recall correctly that you would just sort of Google University of Michigan consumer sentiment, and you could see a chart that would give you an idea of how consumer sentiment is trending? It's the simple. Am I correct? That's a really simple way to get a sense of that.
Yeah, you can. Those are all readily available. The information is so quick today in our industry that all those things get dissected and within seconds, and markets will adjust really quickly. But going forward, where our outlook is, it continues to be that there's the rotation that happened into value will continue. In other words, value stocks are the industrials. They tend to be the dividend payers. Those stocks will continue to be a good place to be. So something like a Pfizer is considered not really growth, not really value. It's a blend. So certain blend stocks are a good place to be. But if you look at where the PE is, or the price to earnings ratio on the stock market, it's still higher than normal. So you might say, are stocks overvalued? Are we in a bubble? The answer is no. But this year, I'm just looking at my left here. Yeah, the S&P is up 11.47 year to date. So market's up about 12 year to date in the U.S. The average over the last 38 years of an inter-year correction is about a little over 14% of drawdown. So we've had a 4% correction. But so if you get a 14% correction, that would be normal. So you could see a 10% correction. That could be around the corner. We thought we were going to get into one about a week ago. Right now, the S&P, it's still looking down, if it gets below 4,000, you could probably expect it to continue lower to about 3,800. That would give you that 10% correction, which would be very healthy. Those are good things. But so stock portfolios should be properly allocated. And if you're going after dividends, that's a good place to be. The value index is up, which are the value stocks. It's up about 18% year to date. So if you own the value stocks, you're really looking good. The growth stocks are lagging. You really shouldn't have too much in high-flying growth stocks if you're retired.
So my sense is, and we're going to invite you back in you know, probably September timeframe, Barry, is that we hope food prices, petroleum will flat, if not come down. As you said, it seemed like we had a peak. Keep your eye on consumer sentiment and the CPI score. And for those of us that, you know, live locally and are either, I think selling is in a great position from a real estate standpoint. Buying, it's a little bit harder, and even renting is pretty hard. But it feels like, despite the fact we've had a global pandemic, that things are, I liked your word when you said we're not in a spiral of any sort. So everybody not only on the call today, and by the way, most people of the 200 plus actually listen to our Zoom after the fact, will be reassured. And it sounds like, you know, hold steady, think about value.
Yeah. So, you know, just in a summary, just in you know, 2-minute summary, you know, always be diversified. On the equity side, we see opportunities outside the U.S. So if you've been underweight international, you want to be starting to increase your exposure overseas. You know, blue chip stocks overseas, there's plenty of them in certain sectors. We like Japan, we like emerging Asia, we like certain European stocks. But you want to be, this is, you know, that you know, I would be a little overweight there. Maybe it all depends on the client, obviously. But on the fixed income side, you want to be short maturity. This is not the time to be buying 30-year treasuries or 30-year municipal bonds. You want to be short, because if interest rates do rise, and they will, we expect rates to go higher, those bonds will lose value. So the bull market in bonds, meaning, you know, that people made money owning bonds, ended last year, and that had started in the early 80s. So for my whole career, every time I bought bonds for clients, they made money year after year after year, because they got the interest rate, but also the bonds went up in value. So now that ended a year ago. So the challenge is going forward with new money going to work in bonds is it's a lot harder. So we have to stay short.
Okay.
Some bonds react better than others, and there are sectors. If you're looking for yield, it's not hard to get 4% very safely today. That's not
Awesome.
That's a good target number for cash flow from dividends and from fixed income. Mixing it up.
Well, Barry, thank you so much on behalf of everybody who's here this morning and everybody who listens later today and tomorrow. We really appreciate your wisdom and your perspective, and God bless. And just as a reminder, Barry and his lovely wife hold a meditation every Wednesday night through Ender's Island, which is on our website if you want to sign up and register. It's just absolutely lovely, and we can't thank you enough for not only your service to us financially, but also for our peace of mind.
It's my pleasure, and we started in person as well. So it's in person, but it's also Zoom. So you can go up in the chapel, or on Wednesdays at 7, or just tune in on Zoom. It's very easy.
Thank you so much.
Half an hour. All right, very good. Let me know if there's anything else, any questions, and happy to help out any way I can. And unless there's any other questions, I'll drop off then.
Thank you, Barry.
All righty.
So now we're gonna switch things up, and I'm I'm really excited to introduce my youngest triplet daughter, Lee. And Lee and her two sisters are really creative with recipes and finding things that will work on their budget and taste great and has great leftovers because they're all three of them are in master's programs now and they don't have a lot of time. And she has landed on a recipe that's become a favorite across our family that she's going to make for us today. And it's chicken burgers. So I'm going to turn my camera over so you can see Lee, and she's going to share with you how to make chicken burgers. And by the way, we went to a value location to buy a lot of the ingredients, which if you haven't been there yet, you should check it out. It's Aldi's in let's see, it's in Westerly, but there's an Aldi's in Middletown and in Newport. Check it out. So here we go. Meet Lee.
Hello, everyone. I'm just gonna move this back here.
How's that?
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. So I'm going to quickly show you how I make my chicken burgers. So to start, I use a pound of ground chicken. I use the Purdue brand, but you can, use any single kind of chicken, ground chicken that you prefer. I've already pre-cut everything to make it a little bit shorter and so you don't have to watch me cut up vegetables. But I use also 1 jalapeno, 1 full avocado, ripe avocado, and then 1 yellow onion. And I use about this big, not too big. And I use gluten-free breadcrumbs, but you can use whatever breadcrumbs you like. My sister's gluten-free, so that is why I use the gluten-free seasoned breadcrumbs. And then I use my spices, which I like to use garlic, salt, and pepper, but you can add whatever you like. So I use this brand, it's pretty good. And then some just regular ground black pepper. And I already have my ground chicken in the bowl. I use about a pound. That's usually what feeds my family with a few leftovers. So I'll add everything in and I'll show you kind of how I do it. Okay, so I'm gonna add in my jalapeno, and it's not spicy. After you eat it, the spice kind of, cooks out, but it adds a nice little crunch. I'm gonna add in my avocado, and I just diced up kind of small so you don't get, a full mouthful of one or the other. And then my onion, I'm only going to use about 3/4 of this one because this onion was kind of big, but again, you can use as much as you like to your own taste or preference.
And we're going to have the ingredients in the recipe we send out, the exact proportions. But as Lee said, you can modify as you're doing it in the email.
Yeah, and I'm not super, accurate with how I measure it. I like to kind of wing it. But I just do it to how it looks because I've made it a bunch of times, so I know kind of what the consistency should look like. But again, that's up to you. So I'm just gonna mix it up here. And I usually like to do this with my hands, but for ease, and so you guys don't see me just manhandle some chicken, I'll use a spoon. Again, this is what my sister actually came up with this recipe because she was getting tired of kind of the same old things that she used to make at school all the time. And I lived with my sister in an apartment and we got kind of bored too. So we kind of shared recipes. We'd talk and text and FaceTime about, what are you eating tonight? Oh, I made a new recipe. So we've kind of shared our recipes throughout the years. And this is the one that, it's a great mix up and it's really quick. It honestly takes almost like 10 minutes to make. So it's really quick if you're on a time crunch.
And unlike some burgers, this burger is not one that you cook on a grill because it would fall apart on the grill. So this is something you do in a fry pan on top of the stove.
Yeah, I just like to pan sear it. It takes about like 5 minutes each side, or if you like it more well done than that, that's totally fine. They don't really change, they don't burn or anything, so you can keep it on the pan as long as you want. But okay, I'm just gonna add in some of my spices once that's all mixed up. And you can also add, some garlic salt or salt to the tops of once I make them into patties, I sometimes like to drizzle on the top once they're already in the pan, just for a little extra flavor.
Lee is getting her master's in occupational therapy at Quinnipiac University.
I am.
And her sister Kelly is getting her master's in physician assistant at Quinnipiac University. And Paige, my middle triplet, is on her way to applying to med school. So we have a lot of caregivers in this family.
Also, one thing that I also would like to add, if you don't like chicken, you can also use turkey. There's ground turkey and it also tastes pretty good too. And you can add whatever you want as well. If you don't like a certain ingredient, you can put in some peppers, you can take out, you know, the jalapeno or the avocado, and just make it to how you like. It's very adaptable. So now I'm just gonna go in with my hands. They're clean, don't worry. And I usually just put a little bit of olive oil on my hands because sometimes it sticks to my hands, and it's easier to make the little patties this way. And I like to pair these with some roasted vegetables or some rice. And you can either do this with or without like a bun. It's up to you. I like them both ways. They taste great either way. So I usually make it about this big. We'll just do the rest of these.
How many hamburgers does it make, or chicken burgers does it make, Lee?
It depends on how big you make the burgers themselves. If you make them pretty big, I would say about 6. But if you make them smaller, it can make up to like 10, which is great because then you can freeze them. They freeze really, really well, and you can just stick them back in the microwave or back onto a pan, and they're really good the next day. So, and they're super easy and quick. And not a lot of ingredients, so it's cheap, which is what I like as a college student. So I'm just gonna finish this. And then I also have ones that are pre-made, so I can show you what that looks like as well. I know it's a little early in the morning to be handling some ground chicken, but I promise you it's worth it. Almost done. Let's see, how many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 already. So this one will probably make about 8 or 9. Oops. I'm also not a perfectionist, so they don't have to be perfectly round. This one will be a little bit bigger. All right, so that one made about, I think, 9 patties, and they work really well. You just put them in a plastic bag and freeze them, and then they're great the next day. And then this is what they look like finished. So you just put them in the pan on some oil, and they sear up really nicely and brown on the side so everyone can see. And like
This
I
is
said,
all that's left. We had 10, and we had to fight to keep these 3 for today because Lee made them last night for our crew at home, and that was all that was left.
yes.
So
this will be lunch today for everyone here. But thank you so much for having me. I hope you make them. They are delicious. And I will now hand it back to my mom, Katie. Thanks, everyone.
thank you, Lee. We are so spoiled to have kids want to cook, let me tell you. And my mom's on the call today, and she's a huge inspiration for all of us cooking. I'm going to switch up. Hi, Mom. I'm going to switch up my view and pull up my PowerPoint now to show you some. Oh, there we have Lee with her chicken burgers. So we're going to switch to, now that it's getting warmer and it's really lovely outside, and I wanted to find a bunch of things that we could all do that are outside that are actually free. So what I did was, I first started with one of the prettiest spots here in Connecticut, which is the Stonington Borough, which many people don't realize has so much richness in such a little tiny place. So down here at the bottom is Dubois Beach, which I'll talk about in a minute, which is the point of the borough. And I'll talk about the Lighthouse Museum, which is right here where my pointer is. And I'll talk about a really pretty seaside walk, which is over here near the mill. And then a lovely spot over here that's part of the Avalonia Conservatory. So look forward to coming to the borough. And the first one I want to feature is the Lighthouse Museum. This is 170 years old. It's right on Water Street on the way down to Dubois Beach. And actually it was the home of several, it's small. When you go inside, you can't realize how small it is. It was the home to several families from 1840 till 1909. And in 1909, the Stonington Breakwater was made. And that had lights so that the lighthouse was not, this lighthouse was not as dependent because of the fact that they built the breakwater. And in 1925, it was sold to the Stonington Historical Society. It's free to Stonington residents and it's $10 for everyone else. It's absolutely super, super sweet. And then this is the view of Dubois Beach, which is down at the very bottom, which by the way, does have a portable toilet. I'm always conscious of where all the toilets are. There's a wooden pavilion, this beautiful wooden pavilion for shade. It was bought by the Stonington Improvement Association in 1950. This is the beach. And at the time in 1950, the town had to raise $20,000 to be able to afford to buy this beach. Can you imagine that? What it would be worth today? And it's named after Kurt Dubois, who was the president of the Stonington Improvement Association, who said, we really want you to buy this beach. So as a result of his efforts, they named the beach after him. This is where my daughters first actually lifeguarded many, many, many years ago. It's a great beach for crabbing. It's absolutely stunning. Many, many people come down here for the sunset. It's like a tradition because there's a beautiful view of the breakwater and sunsets. So as you go back up Water Street, there is a gorgeous shoreline walk that has public access that is also wheelchair friendly. If you know anyone who has a wheelchair and needs to have access that way. When you're coming down Water Street, you look for the Breakwater restaurant and Ness Community Center, and the driveway is right after that. And it has this beautiful gazebo that we often come to with some takeout and just sit in the gazebo so that we can enjoy the view. There's the path right there. It's a big dog walking path. Oh, and so this entire time you're not seeing, thank you, Michael. It sounds like I'm not sharing my screen. Let me go back and hit share my screen. So I'm going to go back quickly and show you what I thought you were seeing. This is Dubois. This is the borough. This is Dubois Beach down here at the bottom. The Lighthouse Museum. Can you see it now, Michael? This is where the Lighthouse Museum is. This is where the shoreline walk is. That's an image of the museum. This is the beautiful shady pavilion at Dubois Beach. And this is the view of the beach. It's a small beach, but it's absolutely spectacular. And this is the Shoreline public access that is wheelchair accessible, and this absolutely stunning gazebo, which Jacinta on our team told us yesterday. She's had a family wedding there before. Absolutely gorgeous, and it's very breezy all summer long. No matter how hot it is anywhere else, it's nice and breezy here. And this is a big dog walking path if you want to come and walk your dogs. This is further down Route 1. This is called the Barn Island Boat Launch, and it's off of Palmer Neck Road. It's in actually just outside of Stonington in Pawcatuck, Connecticut. It has about 1,000 acres and 5 miles of trails, which are really well documented. And there are lots and lots of birds. I think bird watching now must be something I just naturally am attracted to, is all the birds. You've heard me on a couple of these calls. I also learned something new about Barn Island, that more bootleg liquor was landed here during the Prohibition than any other place along the Connecticut shore. Because of its hidden nature, because over here there's a marsh, and yet the water is fairly deep. You can see here in this image, there's some inflatable kayaks. A lot of people come, and it's free to park here, free to visit. It's a state park. Bring their kayaks or their paddle boards. The next location I wanted to tell you about is part of Avalonia. And Avalonia has a number of preserves around Connecticut, and I'll include this in the email that we send out. The Dodge Paddock is in the borough. The Knox family farm is over near Quambog Cove. It is amazing once you start looking, and you can see how many different areas the Avalonia Preserve has purchased on behalf of Connecticut, Rhode Island, and New England residents. So Ram Point is absolutely gorgeous. Sandy Point is, there's just, it's amazing amount of wildlife areas that once you start looking, you realize you see Avalonia in a lot of places. Bluff Point is in Groton. It is a Connecticut state park. This park is huge. It's, again, almost 1,000 acres. It's right over the Stonington border on the way towards Groton. And the Pequot Indians originally used this settlement for fishing. All of their fishing sources came from Bluff Point until the colonists arrived. And then about 1700s, they granted it to Winthrop, John Winthrop. John Winthrop the Young was granted Bluff Point, and he built a number of buildings and farms. And then the Hurricane of 38 took everything down in Bluff Point except for his stone farmhouse, which was the only thing that survived. And when you're hiking Bluff Point, you can actually see the foundation of his farmhouse. And if you hike right to the point of Bluff Point, you can see Fisher's Island, you can see Watch Hill, you can see Latimer Point. It's absolutely gorgeous. The only thing I will remind everyone is that you have to be wearing tall socks for the ticks. So keep your eye out for tick season. So the next thing I wanted to share with you, I'm calling Katy's Deals and Gems. And in many cases it's Deals and Steals, but somebody else already has that label, so I didn't want to use that. And Deb Newman on our team talks about this first company. It's called the Fun Company. And it's before you get to the borough, off of Route 1 on Cutler Street. It's just before the bridge over the railroad. And they have Overstock. If you've ever gone on to overstock.com, it's similar in that they buy things that are overstocked. It's probably the prior year's fashion and home goods and accessories. It's really got some wonderful, wonderful things. My sister Emily will drive all the way from Westport to come to the Fun Company and find some great gifts. Nest is right on Route 1, right opposite the Big Y. It's a boutique that's got just really, really lovely clothing and gifts and home decorating. And they have one of the more famous day after Christmas Christmas ornament sales, not to be missed. So Nest is another gem of a find you might not know to stop at. Oh, and by the way, around the corner from Nest, if you're really interested in hosting a bridge group, now that we can get back together in bridge or some other women's group, they have what's called Brush and Board. I forgot to put the picture up. And it's literally where you come in and you have a painting lesson, and the proceeds go to a charity of your choice. And it's called Brush and Board, and it's right around the corner from Nest. So my next find is an interesting story. It's called Nana's Bakery. It's right behind Sea Swirl on Route 1, if you're familiar with where Sea Swirl is. And it's all organic bakery goods. And there are gorgeous breads and muffins and pastries and almond cakes and cinnamon rolls. And it's part of what's called the 85th Day Food Community. And during COVID, what they realized was the owner also owns Grass and Bone Restaurant, the Oyster Club, and Engine Room here in Stonington, and Stone Acres Farm. And he realized because he wasn't making all of these baked goods for all of the restaurants, but people were still, asking for it and requesting it at retail, they opened Nana's Bakery and Pizza as a retail outlet. And they still, now that the restaurants are opening back up, supply the restaurants bread and food, but they made it public facing. So anybody can come get the amazing pizza, which is on the right, which is just absolutely stunning, the cinnamon rolls, and on the far left is an almond apple cinnamon cake, which is gluten-free, which is always important in our family because we have a gluten-free daughter. So if you get a chance, stop at Nana's Bakery behind Sea Swirl. It sells out every single day. The next one is part of the 85th Day community, which is Stone Acres Farm. This is right off Route 1. They actually have quite a community focus. They have what they call the Yellow Farmhouse Cooking School. They have programs for children. They have a really nice set of vegetables, which was there yesterday when I took pictures of them yesterday. They carry local honey and goat cheese. And they are also a CSA. So if you want to sign up for buying some produce over the summer on a regular basis. And then as you're driving into Stone Acres, you'll see, I think they have over 1,000 chickens, they told me. And they rotate the chickens in their chicken coops all around their farm. Their eggs are absolutely stunning. They're so delicious. So when you get a chance and you're in town, look for Stone Acres Farm and their farm stand. It's really, really yummy. So those are the deals and gems. The next resource I found is one that is really incredible. I'm so impressed with this team. It's called Senior Planet. It's both online and they have locations around the country. They have a free newsletter. They have some really interesting content. So for instance, tomorrow, I just picked up a couple of events they have tomorrow online. And first thing in the morning at 11, they have a lecture on how to keep your financial information safe. And again, it's all free, called Money Matters. And that's hosted by their Montgomery, Alabama location. Later in the afternoon, they have mindful meditation and breathing from the New York City Senior Planet location. And then one of my favorite apps on my iPhone is Spotify, and that's a free online music resource, and it's hosted by the San Antonio Senior Planet location. So I will have the link in the email. It's just a really terrific resource. I've been quite amazed with the number of things I've been able to track down and find. So next I want to introduce, I believe you met, if you were on the call last month, Jacinta Simoncini talked to us about a wonderful bagpiper tattoo event that is actually sold out at Enders Island and Flag Day. But today she's here to talk to us about a series on our Gardens of Hope and Healing. So take it away, Jacinta.
Hi, everyone. It's really nice to meet you. I've been working out on Enders Island now since last October, and I work in the communications department out there. So I sort of got to watch the end of the dahlia season on Enders Island. And I don't know if you've ever been out there, but if you haven't, come out, drive out and just take a walk around the gardens pretty much at any time of the year. They're spectacular because the island is a spectacular place. But I landed there in October and I kind of watched the gardens go into the winter and how they very carefully went through all of the dahlia beds and dug up the tubers and put them away and marked them and did everything they could to take care of these dahlias and winterize them. And I sort of got this idea that we have such a spectacular dahlia garden out on the island, and the people who work on the dahlias out there, they just have so much knowledge that it would be really great to put together a series that would teach other people how to grow these amazing flowers. And so that's what we've done. Richie, who's the head gardener, is working with us, and he's going through all of the steps to how to grow your dahlias and take care of them. And I don't know if I used to work in landscaping. Actually owned a landscaping company out on Fisher's Island in a past life. Although my job as part of that landscaping company was not necessarily being the gardener, that's not where my forte was. I was more on the accounting side and the weeding and the mowing side of things. And so I spent a lot of time in those gardens just weeding, and it's a great place to be thoughtful and just spend some time thinking about your life. And so we kind of put two and two together, and we created this gardening show that also has a component about your spiritual life. Brother David works out on the island, and he's wonderful, and he's put together a podcast and a video that we will also be uploading to YouTube. And he talks about your spiritual life and how basically that can grow just like a garden. So again, every month that we're creating this gardening show, that our first one talks about turning over the soil and starting to enrich it, his podcast will talk about something in your spiritual life that equates to that. So this show is probably going to go on air in June, and you can find them on endersisland.org, our website. I kind of hope that everyone, if you want to grow even 3 or 4 of these flowers, can be spectacular in your garden. So tune in and find out. And I also just want to give you a tip, because I was on last month about the tattoo. However, I did
It's
go
sold
out.
out, but
It is sold out. However, I went to the island last Wednesday, and I just sat in the gardens and I listened as our Enders Island, as St. Edmund's Pipes and Drums practiced. And anybody that wants to come out on a Wednesday night, they usually start practice around 7 o'clock. You can bring a lawn chair and just sit and listen as they practice. And it was really fun. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Jacinta. And this dahlia right here in the picture is called Labyrinth, and I've actually planted it, and I'm hoping mine looks as beautiful as that. I'll let you know. Another update, Marion Dodd's senior wellness video has been uploaded onto YouTube, and we'll be including it in the link. And again, if you have a Silver Sneakers program, you can join the Y for free. Her classes are Monday and Wednesday. Deb Newman on our team goes every Monday and Wednesday morning and absolutely loves it. But if you want to do Marion's exercises at home, they're on YouTube, and they'll be in the link in the email. So again, another thanks to Marion for helping us with strength training, with stretching, all the things that I know I desperately need. And then last but not least, just another reminder that the Mystic Noank Library Spring Fair is back, and it's next week, 9:30 to 2:30, rain or shine. I actually have an entire garden on the one side of my backyard that I call the library garden, because the Mystic Garden Club has a stunning amount of members with amazing perennials. And that's basically what the garden club does. They dig up their perennials in their own yards and bring them to help benefit the garden, the Noank Library, Mystic Noank Library. So you get the most amazing perennials at crazy, crazy reasonable prices, as well as all of the members are there to tell you, including one of my favorite gardeners, Winnie, and Winnie's always telling me, put this in the shade or put this in the sun, or you must have this. And I have now got about, I'm going to say, over 150 ferns of different varieties that I have in a shade garden that are so gorgeous because I've gotten them each year at the Mystic Garden Club sale. So I would say get there early, because folks who really love planting and plants are all waiting in line. They also have some great used books, and they have a white elephant sale. So a lot of really, really wonderful things at Mystic Noank Library. And again, just a reminder, if you didn't sign up for Hoopla yet, Deb on our team has been avidly using Hoopla, which is available in the Bristol Library, the Middletown, the Niantic. Most of the libraries in New England have Hoopla, and it's a free video and audiobook and video service that you can sign up for. That is absolutely a home run. Turn my video back on. Deb, what was the name of the book you were reading that you thought was so wonderful on Hoopla?
Oh, the Mafia Bombers.
The Mafia Bombers,
About
which
the-
is about
The development of the Norden bomb site in World War II.
come on over and tell
Oh.
me. This was an amazing book.
Hi, I'm Deb again. I think we've met before. Many of you. I was telling Katy the other day, I by accident on Hoopla was just looking for something to read, and I found this book it's by Malcolm Gladwell. Many of you have probably heard of him and other books he's written, and it's something I would never have thought of reading or heard of, but it's called the Bomber Mafia. It's about the development of something called the Norden bomb site in the 30s and used in World War II. I was personally interested as soon as I heard about it because my dad was a bombardier in World War II, and he was trained to use the Norden bomb site. So I grew up hearing about this thing, and it's just a very interesting read, and it's on the audio on Hoopla. The way Malcolm Gladwell does it is, he narrates his book, he reads his book, but then he intersperses the voices of all of the people of that era, Norden himself, Winston Churchill. And so I never would have picked it. I highly recommend it. And just as an aside, I was telling Katy the other day, my dad, these bomb sites cost millions to develop. And that was, in the 30s. I grew up hearing the story of how my dad, by accident, dropped the Norden bomb site in the Atlantic Ocean when he was training he was training up in Massachusetts at the Army Air Corps training base, which is still there. I forget the town near Springfield. So that's the book. I do recommend it. And if you aren't already using Hoopla, it's great. I mean, that was a real find for me. And if you don't know what to listen to or what to read, they kind of give you recommendations based on what you might have picked before. Okay.
Thanks, Deb.
for
That was
having
a
me
bit spontaneous, but just listening to her talk about it, it was just so interesting and the other thing that's amazing about Hoopla is that it doesn't matter how many other people are listening to it at the same time. It's not like a book has been checked out and you can't get access to it. As many people can listen to it simultaneously as you want. So we're at the 11 o'clock hour. That hope that you enjoyed everything that we had to share today. Thank you for the thumbs up, Joan. Thanks, Mom. Glad you could join. My sister Amy, Leah, Fran, always glad to see you. Carol, I know you had to run. And everybody who's watching this later, we're really glad to have you in the Seniors Connection. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.